What's up, Slice and Dicers? This week we're going to talk about the basic rules of D&D. We've really covered a lot of the elements of D&D, but this one's about how to actually sort of roll those dice and play the game. My guest for this week is Oliver, and we're excited to hit you up. So we got story time coming up. Thank you for setting through, and we appreciate all the support you guys have given us. Remember to leave your comments, and we're going to kick off today's episode of the basic rules of Dungeons and Dragons. What's up, Slice and Dicers? So, our story today, we're going to talk about a special item that's sort of a homebrewed DM specialty of both my brother and I. It's a magical doorknob. It is a doorknob that you can carry around, and it looks, acts, and feels just like a doorknob until you turn it. It then opens up a small plane to an alternative plane in which you can store items, and every DM can have their own discretion of what their description of their interior room looks like. Mine, usually with my groups, is a 15 by 15 foot room with a table in it and any kind of furniture they want to put in. It really gets around the encumberment problem D&D has sometimes, where people are like really worried about what things weigh. Well, if you're just carrying everything around this magical doorknob plane, it's pretty excellent. And there's been some really cool ways people have solved puzzles using it. And I know Oliver's got some stuff to add.
Yeah, I mean, you were the one that really originally introduced me to this item when you developed it, and I ran in a couple of sessions, abused it a bit in your sessions, but dealing with weight it's such a headache, and just being able to say, okay, you've got this place where you can store stuff. I mean, if you say it has to fit through a doorway, it means that giant golden statue in the room, they're not going to be able to stuff in there. But, you know, most things you'll be able to get into the room fairly easily, and it accommodates.
Anything medium-sized humanoid or smaller fits in the room pretty well.
Yeah. There have been several iterations of it, whether you can transport party members in it or not. I know the campaign we're running right now, the doorknob has a magical lock on it that if any of the party is in the room, the door won't disappear. It is stuck there.
Oh, yeah. And I had to iterate that because otherwise they found nice, fun ways around it where, oh, well, we can't get around this convenient puzzle, but let's everybody just pile in the door and one person can get through and then we'll just all open the door. So we had to figure out fun ways as a DM to problem solve that.
Yeah.
And don't get me started about how I had to contact PETMA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Magical Animals, about your guys' abuse of poor shocker lizards. And
you give us a shocker lizard and you give us a water dungeon, it's going to be used in the water dungeon.
Their strategy typically was slap the shocker lizard till it's pissed off, throw it outside in the water, and everybody hide in the room until nothing's moving outside except the shocker lizard.
Well, in my defense, I'd been killed by our good cleric twice, so my character had turned to evil. But
our poor little shocker lizard.
Yeah.
But
still have a page in a notebook that says door plus shocker lizard equals win.
Yes. So, I mean, that's a fun way of looking at an alternative way to solve a problem.
And it's sort of, as we were talking about, it's an item that's been changed a lot. And every iteration changes because, there's nailing it down, you notice some glaring flaw, and next time you change it, you make it better if it's an item you really like. And don't be afraid to change something if you see there's an obvious problem in it.
Oh, yeah.
I know he's given us several items that, you notice, like he talked about in an earlier episode with the ring, that shrinks us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one still has to be fixed, but I've had situations. My friend Anthony, when he played a gunslinger, had a gun that, had a high crit range, but just due to how he built his character and some of the other bonuses he could get, he ended up building it so he couldn't not crit if he hit something, and it was terrifying.
Sometimes as a DM you have to step in for the integrity of the group and fix the problems. I know everybody wants to see big numbers, but big numbers can sometimes make things really awkward for the rest of the party. And so you gotta do a little bit of fixing it up at that point, and that's going to be in a whole different episode. We all know, if you're an experienced D&D player, people who are power
Power gamer
gamers.
gamers.
They're all about humping those rules until they're doing 700 damage at attack. And those kind of people, they're just really mathematical. Like, they're the person who's like, I have to 100% complete every game. And then you got other people who are just like, I'm here for the experience, baby. Let's have fun. So it's
I'm here for the experience, not the experience.
exactly. That's a very good quote. I'm here for the experience, not the experience. I'm It works. So, one more little thing about milking the rules here, and it's just because I thought about it earlier when we were brainstorming story ideas. A fun way to circle, and this is where your DM's got to figure out, hey, that's clever, let's reward the group, or, not sure. There was about 4 of us that were casters in this one group. We could all cast level 0 spells, and unlimited amount of them. And all of us had Create Water. And so we came at level 1 or level 2, I can't remember, to a situation where we were supposed to try to wade through this horrible, we know it was going to be booby-trapped cave and fight all these kobolds. And instead, we just camped outside the entrance and cast Create Water over and over again into the cave until they eventually floated out, and then we just picked them off on the way. The DM rewarded it because it was a new, different way to sort of get around the problem. But as your DM, if that happens, you're like, damn, what do I do? You could always just say, the kobolds knew there was a creek flowing out the back of the cave, and so they don't have to worry about it.
Or it drained out, or something. Or,
Exactly.
you have to, you generate something that either makes them go in, or you put some sort of time constraint. So this process that might take 4 days, you've only got 6 hours to finish it.
Or everyone's asleep at camp that night and 48 kobolds come out of the front of the cave and attack your group. You're the DM. You can decide which direction it goes. But think outside the box. Homebrew stuff. Have fun. That's the number one thing from all these stories, is just have fun.
Indeed.
So, we're about basic rules of D&D this week for our encounter. And we had a roll initiative question. I thought about posting and doing a roll initiative this week, but I gotta be honest, crazy week. So we just sort of wanted to address it here in the encounter because that was sort of the topic already. And that's how ability scores are used besides just being modifiers. And that really comes down to checks and DCs. You can't just do something because your ability's high enough. You can't be like, I break down the door because my strength's a 16. That doesn't work like that. Everything's based on a D20 system. So you have a higher chance because your strength's a 16, but it all still comes back to the modifiers to an extent. You can make it describe, physical descriptions and stuff, but when we're trying to actually do stuff as players, we have to be based on the rules rolling system.
So, I mean, certainly there are some things where it's going to be something simple. You're not going to have to roll to walk down the street, so every 20th step you're going to trip. That's not how it's going to do. But if it's something where you're strenuous, or you're under pressure, or you're, if it's actually something that could fail, then yeah, there's a check for it.
Oh, definitely. Sorry I had to break into song there for a second.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
Like we said, having fun.
Or just sometimes being weird. It works too. But yeah, so there's lots of checks. And I'm going to give you an example between Oliver and I. We're going to bounce it back and forth of checks for each stat. So we hit it with a strength earlier. Like, I want to break down a door. That's a strength check. I want to lift up this giant boulder. Go
ahead. With that, you're going to have varying levels of strength checks. If you're busting down a wooden door, the DC might be 20. However, you're busting down an iron door, the DC is going to be 35, where you're probably not going to do it as a normal person without extra stuff for a battering ram. If you're just putting your shoulder to it, you're not going to bust down an iron door.
Exactly. DC basically, guys, is their established set number you have to reach or meet to surpass or meet to beat a goal. So the DC of a simple task is going to be low, because for all of these rolls, you're taking a D20, your standard dice system, because this is a D20 system, rolling that and adding your modifier. So here's how it works. I want to bust down this wooden door. I have a +3 on strength. Roll the D20. I rolled a 13. +3. So that's a 16. Is that higher than a 10 or a 12 or whatever we said for the wooden door? Yes, Congratulations, you bust down the door. That's how we sort of base a system and how modifiers and checks work. So if you're the DM, it's all up to your discretion. If you want to know if a group is going to be able to kick down a door, we keep using door kicking, but like lift an heavy object, break something, those are all going to be DCs you set up. When you're writing your session or when you get a rewritten session, there are established DCs. You either establish them or you have them in a pre-written session.
Yeah. And like you said, most of them you can find, as we've said several times, people have done the work. You can find rules, you can find like things anywhere online, but as you play, as you experience, you realize, how difficult is this really going to be? I'll say it's going to be a DC 14. That seems decent.
And adaptability. If your group is struggling through something, lower the DCs of some stuff. Make them get that win. Feel that confidence.
Or if they're just stomping it, jack it up.
Raise
increase things' health. You got to be able to change on the fly.
Oh, yeah. We played a D&D session this past weekend with one of our friends, Pointer, actually DMing, and he didn't realize how much damage several of us were dishing out. Our monk was dishing like 22 damage a hit with his dual attacks and spear mastery and all this other stuff. And I was like, all the zombies got 15 health plus when we started fighting this combat because I realized you were going to be one-shotting them otherwise. So
yeah,
and that's a good DMing. That's addressing a problem and fixing it right there. So that was strength. We got sort of off topic, but it was a good off topic. Dex. Dex can be anything like catching something, throwing something accurately,
repeating a task,
dodging something. All of these come in. We're going to talk
disarming a bomb.
We're going to talk about skills a whole nother day because that's like this on crack. But this
skills
is
are inevitably what you're really doing the checks for. These are the modifiers that go into your skills, or you can even say combat is your skill in combat.
Yeah.
So these are the things that are your ability mods are going into the other skills, and those skills are what you're beating DCs with.
Con mods, the Constitution.
And if we haven't stated it, DC is difficulty check.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't even realize might not have said that. Now you do. Knowing's half the battle. But, like a con check could be like, I ate raw chicken. Am I going to get sick? It's almost like a con save, and there are saves still, but you can throw it up into con as a stat, the Constitution, so.
Yeah, in traditional D&D and Pathfinder, it's, fortitude. In 5.0, they kind of streamlined it a bit, so it's a save for that stat. So, and your other rule systems, it'll change up a variability. But in general, that's the basic.
Yeah, exactly. Wisdom. Knowing if you knew these people. Knowing if it's the right time to speak. Those are great wisdom checks. Intelligence. What kind of tree is this? Intelligence.
What language are they speaking? What architecture are these strange people's buildings made from?
Have I seen this stonework before? Intelligence. Charisma is my favorite. Charisma is all things. It's like, I'm going to try to sell the Eskimo ice. That's charisma checks. I want to convince the guard it's okay to let me in the evidence locker.
Yeah. And how you take about charisma, I think, has one of the more, creative on when you're doing your DCs for it, because depending on how you are with your group, it's good to make them try to think on what they're saying. If they say they're going to bluff to someone, if they don't tell you how they're going to lie to someone, that can make a big difference on whether, if you sell a convincing story. It's a really good way to get your players role-playing to come up with creative ideas and to work it out.
D&D is like acting for lazy people. You have to figure out what you would say to convince the person, but I'm not going to make you get up and do the whole thing. I mean, there are people who do with live action role playing, etc. But D&D is, I got something quippy I could say for here, and it's going to convince this person. And let me think using my head, and then say using my tongue as the character. And so I could call it's acting for lazy people. Because you have to be able to, convince the person. You can't just be like, I walk up to the shopkeep. I roll a bluff check. I succeed. he believes my bluff. If you're playing
Thus
D&D
he
like
gives it to me.
if you're playing D&D like that, that's boring ass D&D. You're wanting to be like,
So, Mr. Finnegan, I hear you've been drinking down at the bar recently. I think I saw you the other day. The O'Malley is getting rather mad with you. You might want to tone it down. I could maybe put in a good word for you if you know what I mean.
and everyone's slightly more scared now, and also wondering why you went so Irish with that. But exactly,
I used the name Finnegan,
I know.
so
You're going with your story. No, I like it. You exactly that right there, folks, is exactly what you want to do when you're developing a character. Don't be afraid to go out and do fun stuff. You know, if you're playing a dwarf and you're a shopkeep and you're interacting and you're just like, hey, I hear you have the best wares in all the land, and so I'm looking for something that'll get my blade shined in it.
butter 'em up.
Yeah, exactly. Look at something. My group was picking on me this week because we were trying to gather intelligence, and I basically was like, here's everything we know. And they're like, well, when we get murdered later, we'll at least know why I did that. But you know what? The DM, as he told me later, was like, that guy trusted you completely because you basically were like, here's everything possible. You know, if he had.
Please help us.
Please help us. You know, but I threw out the whole story, and it was very convincing because of that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then me and the rogue went off, and we were being fairly coy and such with our remarks, and he gave us some information, but we didn't want to get ourselves stabbed in the back.
And I was like, just tell me everything, please. I'm desperate. So, anyway, I'm pathetic. But that leads me to the next thing, which is when I'm teaching new people how to play D&D, the first thing I get is attacking. How do I attack? Because everyone is like, I want to hit it with the sword. Yeah. Well, how does that work? Same thing as with modifier checks. Roll the d20, add your attack bonus, see if you break their armor class. So if you're fighting something very weak, like a kobold or a goblin, that might only have an armor class of 11 or 12, and you have a +6 to your attack with that great sword, and you roll a 14, and you're like, 14 plus 6 equals 20. I do math good. And then you're like, I got a 20. Is that higher than its armor class? Yes. Well, then you hit. Then you get to roll those damage dice. Too often when we're playing with new players, they're like, I'm going to attack with my sword. It does 2d6s. I roll it. I did 11 damage. I'm like, no, you didn't, because we don't even know if you hit yet. If you hit, you did 11 damage. But you got to roll to see if you hit first. That d20 is basically your ultimate modifier to see if you hit or not. If successful or not. Then the effect comes into play.
Most basic things are based off of a base level of 10, as in like common task, easy thing. A lot of checks, if you're not stressed or anything, you can take a 10 as you can just say my roll was a 10.
If you're like, I need to throw this ball to that guy, and I have no time constraints, I'm just going to take a 10. 6 throws in, success, Because
I'm going to walk around town till I find the general store. Rather than rolling a, investigate or knowledge local or whatever. It's like, hey, you found the store. It's easy enough.
Because they're non-time constraint. If you're running from a dragon and have to jump over a cliff, that is a very time-constrained thing. You can't be like, all right, I'm going to stand here and contemplate this jump for the next 4 minutes. You're now in the digestive system of a dragon, because you have a time constraint. Those things have d20 rolls to see if you're successful, because it's a split decision.
Yeah, and that's what combat is going to be. You're never going to take a 10 in combat because you're fighting.
Exactly. Now old school D&D sometimes magics were automatic hits, like back in the day, and some still are. Like Magic Missile.
A lot still are.
Magic Missile, you're like, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but hit. You know it's going to hit.
Yeah. It's in this area. They might get a chance to avoid it, but you don't have to roll the attack. You just... I throw a fireball next to that guy. He doesn't dodge it. He's taking 10d6.
And if he can dodge, he can take half. So you're still doing damage. Magic is nice. Now, because of that, magic you don't usually get as much as a day. Now, you can hit stuff with a sword as many times as you want, but you might only get 2 fireballs a day when you get a higher level, etc.
Yeah.
Like you have to prepare based on your class. But those are more just rolling damage. Although I do appreciate in 5e the level 0 spells like Firebolt. You have to roll and see if your spell hits.
Yeah,
Like
in
for
which there in other systems, there's the ray attacks where you have to actually hit with the laser beam.
or touch attacks, you have to be touching your target. Um, so that's really cool stuff. Anyway, those are basically how physical and magical attacks work, and those are the basic rules of D&D. If you know nothing else now, you should be able to go out, use your character sheet because we're going to work on making characters coming up. Use this the way we did stuff, and with a DM who's got any kind of experience, play a session.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that concludes our week this week. We're going to be more detailed next week. We got some more big plans coming, and hopefully we'll hit it real quick. We're going to start covering and doing highlights on classes. We're going to start highlighting how to make a character. All these episodes are going to be coming on hot off the presses for you soon. So we appreciate you for sticking through us to episode 6. And we got a lot more coming down the pipe, and we're going to come up with some cool ideas. Leave comments. Tell us, and we can make awesome roll initiatives for you. So we appreciate it. And then,
Or maybe even full episodes if you have a good question. I mean,
exactly.
in a sense, the previous one led into this week's question.
Yeah.
So
The previous question, and we'll talk about that later because it will actually address it in another role initiative, which was how do modifiers work? I mean, not how do stats themselves work, not just modifiers. So, and that's sort of why we came over with basic rules of D&D here. But anyway, until next week, this is Daniel and Oliver, and I got to tell you, fans, don't roll too many ones.